As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
The Pacific Experience Podcast.
Yes, it is. It is November 20th. November 20th. It's November 20th, 2018. We're hitting this live on a Tuesday.
Yes!
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Pacific Experience Podcast. I am your host, Lloyd.
Coast Austin back again.
Fuck the whole host thing. This is Lloyd and Austin.
Yes.
Those of you listening, you know what we're doing. You know what we're here to do. You know what we're here to talk about, and you should know what you're in for. So
Yes, welcome. So it's as everybody's leading up to, and it's different as you're an adult or you have a career or you're not, just mainly in school. It's Thanksgiving. It's tomorrow.
yes,
Wait,
no,
Thursday?
day after tomorrow.
Day after tomorrow. Yeah, that's what you get as an adult. You just
Or
assume.
it's Thanksgiving today. Whenever you're listening to this,
That's true.
people
That's
usually
true.
we usually get feed hits on Saturdays and Sundays.
But I will say this is one of my favorite holidays because you just eat food, get to hang around family that you may or may not enjoy, but you don't have an obligation to have a deep-seated connection. You're there for food. You're there for the coalescence of people that you mutually or just remotely are related to. But then there's also alcohol involved.
Right.
So it's
as we're
it's as we were drinking the festive Rainier for 'tis the season, the winter jubilee can. Because winter's upon us. It's been like 30 degrees sometimes when I wake up in Parkland. For
I
sure.
believe it, man. It's been
Yeah.
getting pretty fucking
It's
cold
been
in the
getting
morning.
crisp and cold, and it's great. I love it.
Me too.
Crunchy permafrost on the ground.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And hopefully those of you listening, or even those of you who are not from here, those of you listening are probably enjoying the same thing, because this is up in the PNW. However, I ran into my uncle who used to live here and has lived in California for the last 15, 20-something years. I was like, hey, do you miss the PNW? He's like, nope. I was like, why? He's like, it's too cold. I was like, oh, no, it's not. I do not think it's too cold. It is too cold sometimes, but the cold, you can just wear a fucking jacket and you're good. So,
Well, I think that's one of those things where people say it's too cold. Do you dress warm enough?
yeah, that's
Fire
the question.
back. You just shoot him right in the kneecap. Anyways, things have been happening. One thing I want to
Yes.
talk about, because obviously it's been on everybody's radar, California wildfire, campfire, which has been the deadliest wildfire
What, in history?
in California's
California history?
state's history. Yes, it's killed 72 people. There's 1,200 people unaccounted for. So this wildfire, what was most interesting about it is that it's not saying it was slightly late in the season, but it was. Late in the season, high winds picked up this wildfire, and it drove it through Paradise, California, at a really rapid rate. And what's interesting is that when you think about, like, rapid rate, seeing videos from different live leak sources, from different independent news sources,
Dude, I keep
and
watching
seeing
them, and
photos, dude, it looks like apocalyptic times. I mean,
yes,
it
really
like
does.
a darkened sky. There's no sunlight. Everything is just on fire, coming down around you. People are panicked in the videos, as they should be, because there's 72 people confirmed dead out of 1,200 missing.
Yeah.
But there's many more through these wildfires that the examiners can't identify because they're so burned. It's not trying to make your week disappointing. It's just something that's prominent. But literally,
and this is a very big deal.
People were trapped in their cars, burned alive to the point where they can't have any. Why am I blanking on the word? They can't identify them.
Right.
So you're trying to escape.
What you're saying with that is, what that's saying is that people are trying to escape. Dude, I don't really have much to say about it because, of course it is negative, it's sad, but it's not something to just avoid. It's happening, and every day I wake up and check the fucking news articles, it's more and more. And now there's videos coming out. I agree, dude. I've seen a ton of videos, and these videos are giving me fucking nightmares, dude, because it seems fake. Because, dude, I watched a
It's
video
like
of
something
this
you see
mom.
in a video game. I mean, these
Absolutely.
were like this is what we like watched in video games when we play missions.
Right, like this is not fake. Dude, I saw this one with this mom and her child. They were on the highway and they're driving, and just all of a sudden the fucking windshield just starts getting pattered with rocks and flaming just pieces of nature just
debris.
shattering
Yeah,
debris.
yeah.
Thank you. One word for it, debris. And so eventually, like, she starts crying. She's like, "We can't go this way. We have to turn around." And when she turns around, she's driving on the opposite side of the highway now, and there's tons of cars trying to escape. And she turns around, she's driving. Other cars see her turning around. She's pointing to turn around, telling them to stop and turn around. As she turns around and is driving, she's being told to turn around. Imagine being, okay, when you're stuck in traffic, imagine there's just like a wall of fire the size of
traffic. It's the fact this is fight or flight. This is the same thing as like an active shooter. This is the same thing as being in it's survival, and like how
Well said.
do you know what is going?
You have to your body is going to make an instinct
that.
call. I can't. That's all I can
I like
do.
to so
Is imagine.
it's not even like a weird tangent, but it is. The feeling of that sensation is something that you can't experience until you're in it. But I will say, similar to that, when you are like when you're doing working out or physical exercise or whatever you're doing, I guess it doesn't matter what activity you're doing. But Joe Rogan had a couple people talking about it, that when they were doing hard tasks and typically they were working out and physical exercise, it was sort of like, what was their mindset? Something that comes to mind to me, and I think I talked about this briefly, but it's like combat. But like I think there's times when I'm tired at my workout, but I know that I want to keep going. I think about situations where like my loved ones are getting harmed, like people breaking into my mom's house and I'm there, or like. But it would be for. I mean, it'd be a combat situation. It'd be something that does activate
the human body is
like
capable
fight
of
or
a lot.
flight instinct, and when you're wanting to protect people you love, you much more have that fight instinct, I feel, than the flight. But what's interesting to me is that, can you imagine you're trying to escape this natural phenomenon, and that's what you're feeling is fight or flight, and you're trying to do that, and you're with a bunch of other people that are just as confused as you are. That's got to be so overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I would say intoxicating too. Like, it probably disorients you. I think it's similar. It's not to make. So we're not trying to make your whole week depressed, but there's been a lot of stuff going on in terms of like active shootings too within the past week. Literally, one of them was in a California hot yoga studio. Or no, not it. No. There was one in a yoga studio, but there's one at a bar. That's what it was.
Yeah.
It was an ex-Marine who went and shot up a country bar in a pretty wealthy part of California. But what was interesting to me, it was sad. And trust me, I feel sympathy for this. I'm not at all praising the victims or what happened. But there was quite a few people in this bar that when this active shooting was going on, and he's ex-Marine, so that means he has gun training. He knows how to point and shoot. He knows how to reload quickly. He's not flustered. Like, he obviously has some pragmatic, systematic way of doing what he's doing. Mm-hmm. Not saying all shooters have that, but like when you have a military background,
your muscle memory and your trigger reaction.
Yeah, it's like enforced to second nature.
You don't have to think about it. Just
but
like you don't think about taking your pants down to fucking go use the toilet. You don't think about it. You just do it.
That's what I'm not trying to I'm not trying to correlate that to like, oh, a lot of shooters are ex-military, because they're not. I'm just saying, like, he had that background, so it made him more effective in what he did.
Of course.
But what was interesting is that a lot of these people that were victims and were involved in this bar shooting that got out, there's quite a few people that counted the number of shots that he shot from his gun, which was a pistol, it was a Glock. And I don't think it was an extended magazine, because I think he shot 26 shots, or 26 rounds, which means a typical Glock magazine, I think, is like 11 or 12, and then one in the chamber. So But the point I'm getting is that even in this heightened environment of where people are, you're fleeing, and the majority of people were fleeing. They were wanting to get away. There was still quite a few number of people that reported they listened for the amount of shots that he shot, and then when they heard that magazine reload, which typically slide kicks back, and it makes a very distinct noise of ejecting the last cartridge. The slide's not going forward, and he has to reload, and that's where there's a couple patrons where they had pulled people under a pool table. And these two people had talked about listening for the shots. And when they heard that sound, they stood up and they threw bar stools through the window and they broke the bar windows. And they ferried like 40 people out. I mean, I shit you not.
Damn.
Like, a couple people started just throwing people through these broken windows, being like, let's get the fuck out of here. Let's go.
Yeah.
And these people escaping sustained injuries from the glass or whatnot. But what interests me about that is that at least I think people are getting recognized too when you're in a situation like that. Okay, so what's pragmatic? Like, you have to get out, but also like
survival instinct.
Don't get up during the firing. Like, listen.
Right.
And everybody likes to say, and even I like to say too, like I'm relating to in terms of when I'm working out and I'm tired and I imagine somebody hurting people I love, and that gets me this like primal, like that's what it does. Like, dude, my hair sticks up. Like, I get a surge of energy because if you can imagine what it's like for people you care about getting harmed, and you can imagine like that protective sense, like that allows you to draw that out quicker. And that's something that Joe Rogan talked about on his podcast, is that
it's using the force.
Oh,
if you can
really
fucking
is.
harness it, man.
Like, if you're able to draw that out, can you imagine if you're in a situation like that, but you're able to like pull that out?
Yeah, pull that out.
And just
add
have
a fucking
that.
snap.
Like, that's what people that do that get the Medal of Honor are made out of. I mean, they're able to.
No kidding, man.
In an instant. Did you? Oh shit! I'm gonna go off on a tangent. It'll be short. Remy, whatever, he was the
Remy.
You know what? I'll look up his name because it's totally worth doing. Because he was, when we were in high school, is when he received the Medal of Honor, or his Call of Duty is where he received the Medal of Honor. Medal of Honor recipient.
a Vietnam veteran, Marine, I believe, just won. Oh, well, no, I think it was a sailor. Yeah, because he won the Navy Cross. Yeah, he's a sailor, and he just won the Navy Cross. It's the second highest, medal that you can win, and he won it from a Vietnam story that was pretty epic. But anyways, just to look at how many years have gone past, and to be awarded, it at some point, that's pretty cool, man. To go 40-something years after having such an epic story like his, especially during the Vietnam War, and then to finally be acknowledged, it's terrific.
Do you want to talk about that really quick?
Well, I'll try to remember it. It was, I can't remember this story for what happened, man. However, I do got some stuff to bring up.
Do it.
By the way, everyone, you can tune in at packxpodcast.com. Hit us up at Instagram at packxpod. And I want to say thank you to listeners so much. You guys are awesome. We fucking love you, and we appreciate everything that you are doing. Thanks for the thumbs up, for the downloads, for the follows and likes, blah, blah, blah. And, Austin, we got rowdy last episode. I did. I got rowdy. I was just, kind of just, shitting on everyone, pissing in everyone's Cheerios every time you try to.
No, we're allowed to get rowdy.
Here's the thing, man. I think to kind of go back to what we were talking about, using the force to tap into that gorilla fucking instinct, using the force, using that analogy. You and I have been talking about, I've definitely went on blast about like the deep state, last episode. And I did. And it's by far. And I was a little rude. I was a little ridiculous too. I was also half being funny.
Half cocked?
Yeah. Yeah.
You
I
little
just-
half-cocked.
A little bit. I was over here,
Because when you find
Bust-
banana bread, it fucking works, bro. Hell yeah, sick.
my dog's like, what's going on?
Yeah, you should be afraid. No, it's okay.
Oh.
It's how you should live your life, finding banana bread at your work for free.
Ah.
Yeah. But it's okay. Yeah, dude. It was. I mean, dude, what can you get? We both get involved in the deep state for sure.
I think there's a lot going on. I definitely vomited it out on that last episode. Yeah. Anyways, dude, I was reading something. I found an article about Bill Nye. Bill Nye says that us going to Mars is stupid. What do you think about that?
Well, he's Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Exactly.
I would say I think one thing is that there's probably life on Mars, but the rotation is so close to the sun. I think that's what killed it. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, that's what makes our planet so viable. Is that Earth has this rotational gravity that is at such a delicate distance for right now.
Yeah.
That it's not burning us alive or not making us cold to die. The things that have made it, which there was a short article on, they found a super crater, or not, I wouldn't say a super crater, but they found a giant impact crater in Iceland. And so one thing that they noticed was it was huge. It was a large, yeah. It's gonna be the hugest. It's gonna be the biggest, the greatest. But so the theory of this asteroid hitting Earth, and they thought it was in California, and they thought so when this asteroid hit Earth and it created a giant cloud that covered the northern hemisphere and created this giant I would say cold system, but so much of it blocked the northern hemisphere and created a cold age, and it was in the same time period that also the bubonic plague and all these things were going on. But what was interesting about it is that it didn't originate in California. It originated in Iceland, and that they're able to take samples from it to determine what crashed into it, how it affected.
I don't believe in it.
You don't? You think it's a conspiracy?
I do. Enough to where Austin's fucking eye just twitched at me.
Yeah. My brain's like, wait, I read this
Yeah.
on the internet from multiple sources. The internet's lying to me?
No, I don't think the internet's lying to you, and I believe everyone believes what they're doing. I don't think there's anyone snickering behind a curtain. I think there is, but I think it's so deep that I don't know, man. I think that.
Do you think
I
history
think
has been shaped?
Well, yeah. I mean, of course, the winner, writes the history. The victor writes the books.
World War II is an easy example of that.
Yeah,
I mean, the United States didn't win World War II. The Russians won World War II. That's why they spent millions of human lives on World War II.
Millions.
I mean, you don't have to be an idiot to see that. I mean, you can watch Band of Brothers. Can't remember his name. He created a Netflix series, sort of a history series, though, because his kids were going to school and they were telling him about the history of of the United States, and he was like, "Oh," because he grew up in that time, and he's like, "That's not at all what happened." To give a quick breakdown, so when World War II happened, it was between the Germans, Russians, Japanese, and us. But the United States and the Japanese started off the engagement with Pearl Harbor, whereas Germany started rampaging through Europe, and the Russians
Blitzkrieg.
Oh, absolutely! So the UK was our ally, France was our ally, and all those allied countries, and Germany just stomped all over them. But Russia was over there, and they started to go into Russia, and Russia stood up for what they were, and they were not at all equipped, didn't have military, didn't have any of these things, but they just threw bodies. They literally just I mean, scorched earth policy.
That was truly, man,
They lost
to
generations.
to call it a citizenship is, I don't know what you would call it, but that was the body. That was the people of a nation that was fighting a well-armed, a well-trained, well-provided
Systematic,
for, motivated, fucking just sharp sword. Dude, it's the same shit's happening. It's the Empire and it's the fucking rebellion, dude.
Yep.
And that was the Empire, and right now the Empire is fighting the fucking rebellion here in the United States in a very undercover fucking virtual fucking way.
Oh, yeah.
And it's, dude, it's just now disguised and it's happening in such a fucking
shady
fucking chessboard,
as it
shady
is.
fucking way.
Since it's happened since World War II.
But World War II was the easy, not what I was gonna say is easiest to comprehend in the sense of, like I said, the sharp fucking spear, just like the Empire, just fucking moving along. Dude, they literally moved along like that, like a fucking spear. They made a triangle like an arrow of the Blitzkrieg and just fucking literally foot by foot took over Europe.
Yep. They carved it.
Oh, it's insane.
I will say too, and it's what I think people need to recognize, especially if you're in the United States. What you're taught is that we won the war, and the United States had agreed with, I would say, the United Nations, but they agreed with the United Kingdom and France, but they also agreed with Russia to fight this force. That's why there's Axis and allies. You know,
right.
We agreed with the allies that we would fight, but we were over in the Pacific fighting the Japanese.
The Marine Corps and the Navy was in the Pacific, and the Army and the Air Force
that shit was horrendous for them. I mean, because they went through so many different terrains and
amphibious,
and they were totally. I would say the Japanese, and this is not being racist at all, because this is just going through the time period. But they were very much fed through Hitler on how to fight and how to believe, and they're already very
they would take their own lives before being taken
exactly.
by an American
their culture
bullet.
already dictated it too, so they felt doubly backed. We spent most of the war fighting the Japanese and the Pacific Islands. And that was horrendous. I mean, I think even just for Band of Brothers being universal,
the Pacific is kind of the opposing series. You have the Band of Brothers series, which is about the Army in Germany.
But
then you have the Pacific.
Watching those episodes where literally it monsooned and rained for months, you had soldiers killing themselves because.
Have you watched the Pacific?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's ridiculous.
It's about a weapons platoon too.
There's. Oh, dude!
There's mortarmen and machine gunners.
Oh God,
it's great, man.
There's so much about it that people don't realize. It's not just about your military and your equipment. It's about your mental state of mind. It's about the condition of how you live. And
it's about the guy next to the left and right of you, and like you're saying, that instinct. When they're there, they have that instinct to survive, but that instinct for your family. That's how they are when they're with that fuck those other guys, that brotherhood, wherever they are. I mean, dude, if you talk to anyone who has done that, dude, they all say the same thing. It's about the guy left and right of you and getting them home safely.
Yep.
That's what it's not about
and it broke
anything else.
A lot of people down, especially when your enemy is so accustomed to the environment, the seasons, and it came from Vietnam, but like Japanese too, like they all had tunnel systems, like they all knew how to dig into the land. And meanwhile, the United States are out in fucking trenches and tarps and being exposed to the elements, and that's what wore them down a lot. But we prevailed. We pursued. We had enough people. Like, it was brutal. But my point is that entire time that was going on is that the Russians were just throwing bodies at the Germans. They had armor. They had Air Force. They had why am I blanking on the word? Like technology, guns, everything.
Right.
I mean, the typical thing, and it's
a military.
We grew up playing video games, right?
Complex.
Like, you remember playing Call of Duty World at War?
Yeah.
But like, you played Russian missions where you were a Russian soldier, and I remember this mission where you just had a magazine, and you were supposed to go to certain checkpoints in the mission, but eventually you picked up a gun. That was reality.
Have you seen the movie Enemy at the Gates?
Yes.
Oh, it starts out with the sniper and the fucking
brutal,
charge.
Dude.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah.
And
he's not even handed a fucking rifle. He's handed fucking ammunition.
Yep. Just exactly like literally a magazine, like 10 rounds.
And it's
for
supposed
a
to be
rifle.
When that other guy not only that the Rush they would shoot anyone who retreated. So when they knew that they lost the charge, you had like probably 12 to 20 fucking guys. They're like, okay, we're done for. They have an entire fucking brute force of tanks and machine guns and MG42s set up. So they turn around and then their Russian commander
Officers,
fucking just waxes them down.
Yep.
It's
Dude,
to show that kind of mentality to the enemy and to future soldiers who are going to come up and fight.
Dude, and that's why they fucking won it. I shit you not.
I fucking agree. And because they did scorch and running too, they would burn everything behind them when they would flee, so the Germans couldn't use it.
Yeah, I think that's one thing, especially for the Germans being so pragmatic and having all this technology and training. They weren't ready to deal with. I mean, that was guerrilla warfare.
Yeah.
I mean, burning your land, burning the crops, burning everything. So when the enemy came in, they had no stronghold. You couldn't use buildings. You couldn't use anything because they burned it. They literally were like, "Oh,
right.
You're going to take us over? Cool, man. We're going to burn everything so it's flat land." Like
everything
so
was
you're
set by
gonna
train
walk.
or by plane.
Yeah.
So they would destroy airfields, and you just cut off supply to.
I mean,
everything was
dude,
about cutting off
they
supply.
Were so that's why it does. I would say it definitely makes me sad because, I mean, they lost multiple generations. I mean, they lost millions of people, literally throwing bodies, fighting the Germans, and they held them off. I mean, they held them off for so long until we finally came in. It was like the last 2 months of the war that we finally came into like Stalingrad or whatever it was and fought with the Russians, and we provided the guns and the manpower after they had already spent millions of lives, like holding them at bay. It's
insane, man.
Dude, and that's one thing. Like I think what we're
Do
getting
you
at the
think
root
Hitler
of
died?
Fight or fright? Oh fuck, no, he didn't die.
Yeah,
no way.
I don't think he
You
died
ever
either.
seen Hunting Hitler? Yeah, dude.
I've watched tons of stuff about it,
and a bunch of government agencies spent millions of dollars. He was in South Africa. He had a bunch of. I mean, the fact
Do
that.
you think he went to Antarctica? That's the scuttlebutt, the conspiracy around the.
I haven't seen that far. I will say he definitely left the country and went to like South America. I mean, there's way too much evidence on, especially on that show. But one of the biggest pieces that like sold it for me was they found this house, this giant mountain. I wouldn't say they found, but there was this giant fucking mansion in an inlet of a bay. So that means the waterfront is facing outwards from the place, and this bay was very narrowed into the inlet of this house, and there was a bunch of high rock features that had gun turrets on them, and this mansion not only had Nazi memorabilia, but behind said mansion there was an underground built compound. Like a whole nother large building. And the reason they found it is that when they were looking there, they found air vents. And then when they used sonograph, it was basically metal. When you're trying to find metal pieces underground, I forget that.
Yeah, metal detector, fucking gold detector.
But so this thing sent out sound waves to track and project.
Sent out frequencies?
Yeah, exactly. To project buildings or units underneath, like just spaces.
Yeah.
And it showed that there was collapsed spaces, and it was huge. It was just as big as the house.
That's bizarre, man. But I believe it.
Oh, dude, there's so much evidence to support it because Hitler, his body was covered in a sheet with his supposed wife. But before that happened, there was airplanes evacuating Germany that had a bunch of his personal belongings on it. I mean, a ton of it.
That's crazy.
And he had huge Nazi connections in terms of industry, dealing with cotton and gemstones that were in South America.
So what do you think happened with the Nazi occupation?
Oh, dude, it just moved to South America. I
think they came here.
Oh, hell
to the United States, because you look at it. Then the war. Okay, the Hiroshima. Okay, the bomb. We all know that we hired a bunch of fucking German scientists to do that, like Werner von Braun. Okay, look at fucking Einstein. Einstein was fucking German.
Oh yeah, dude.
You know what I mean? So we took all these scientists. You know what NASA? Look at NASA, Nazi.
Yeah, it built out a bunch of because they're already building V2 rockets. We were lucky that when we entered the war and the Russians had wore them down, that we came in, were able to capture what they had, because they would have obliterated us if they had withstood and were able to use those rockets.
Yeah.
we'd been fucked. And then what did we do? We turned around and we dropped it on civilian cities in Japan to show our force.
Right.
And that's when all those scientists that we captured, by the way, said,
We're German.
Don't do it. They literally said, like, this is scary.
Do not do that.
You should not use this.
And
do
that's when it probably shook our neighbors here in the solar system.
That's why we have race wars.
And like I've said before, when that happened, the aliens fucking around us, or the extraterrestrials, or their life living out there, was probably like, great, the kids found the matches.
Oh yeah, dude, they took notice.
Yeah, absolutely. I bet you not only did we do as much damage as we did in our home, I bet you we did damage to another race in another fucking planet or galaxy.
Yeah, because we're blowing them up in the
with
deep
that bomb,
ocean.
Yeah,
and everything. Dude,
I bet you we fucked some shit up around that we don't even know how, or even that we did. At least us as the majority fucking public.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating, man. That's what makes me think about space. So it leads us to space, man, because then the space race happened. Okay, you have JFK who wanted to blow the fucking lid on it, on aliens, and then, gets taken care of a week later. You look at Eisenhower's speech about the military-industrial complex. Have you seen or heard that speech?
I haven't. No.
Dude, Eisenhower. We'll check it out on the break. Eisenhower gives this speech talking about the military-industrial complex and how that is now basically. It will be controlled by is the enemy.
Yeah.
You need to look out for that. Like he's saying, okay. In fact, let's take a break.
Talk about it.
Let's talk about it. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. Check us out at hackxpodcast.com. This is episode 29. We'll see you after the break.
Things come to those that wait, dude. But there's a lot of evil in this life, man. There's a lot of bad things like fucking skunks, dude. Skunks, bro. Hell nah. And then, you're scratching your eye. It still fucking itches. Hell no.
Hell no.
Then getting paid a little amount of money for work? Hell no! Hell no! But banana bread, dude, for free at your work? Hell yes! Hell yes, dude! Good things come to those who wait! And banana bread at your GD work? Hell yeah, bro! The Specific Experience Podcast. Welcome back. Woo! Life's about banana bread, man. Banana bread and all the good things in life. That was a little iteration from something I saw on the internet, so don't take it as my own, but this guy made my day, so I just had to give him a little shout out for whoever this dude is. Looked like he got off the graveyard shift. But yeah, he's wonderful. Banana bread is life.
Holy shit. Oh, that was genius. So, everyone, thank you for tuning in. This is the Pacific Experience Podcast. This is Lloyd and Austin. We're here to rock and roll. Thank you so much for tuning in. The best thing you can do for us, share our podcast with your friends. Actually, share your podcast. We are your podcast. Share your podcast with your friends. Yep. Maybe not with your family. And, yeah.
I like that. Not with your family.
Right.
Yeah, download, share. I think we all appreciate feedback too. We
Definitely.
talk about that all the time. People have been a little scared too. I'm not afraid to receive feedback. I have noticed our downloads have been going up. Over the past 4 episodes. I think you said 27 was our best one.
Yeah, episode 27.
2 episodes ago.
Yeah.
But that's great. I mean, it's cool to see people new.
Our best recent one.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the last 10.
Going, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to find out what people are interested in talking about. We're trying to, also tell you what our lives are about here in, the upper left and in.
That's right.
In Washington State, and just, I don't know. It's a glimpse of a life you don't get to see.
That's right. Well said. And we're here to give it to you. So Austin,
Give it to him.
we left on the military-industrial complex.
Yep.
Mr. fucking Eisenhower, who was a general during World War II, and was our president. Like a lot of past heroes of this great country. Anyways, Austin, dude, what was your takeaway?
So
That banana bread! There's a lot of evil things!
He's good. Yeah, he's good, dude. He's got this. Yeah, he's the embodiment of you and I for sure. Like when we get upset about things, we just want to shout about it in a ridiculous manner. I would agree. I think a big part, and I would say boldly that the downfall of a lot of civilization in the world is that as opposed to being able to talk and debate and understand and have a conversation, we build things that throw rocks faster, and we build nuclear weapons. I mean, we just, why listen to somebody when you can just have something that kills them? And that's what has dictated a lot of this world. I mean, power over, it's physical power. I mean,
Right.
You can look back through history because it's happened. I mean, you've had the Renaissance period was a great showing of that, where you had a lot of people that were intellectuals, artists, educators, poets, so many philosophers, so much against the norm.
Right.
And then it all got overtaken by people that just had more horsemen and crossbows, and
That's a good way of saying it. They
there
had
was-
more manpower.
Yeah,
Essentially,
exactly.
more money.
And that was the thing too, is that I think when people that don't understand but they're in power, if you have power, and that's a very delicate thing, if you have power in numbers, you can overpower smarter people because you just have more bodies to throw. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, I think
Metaphorically and literally.
so this is Austin saying this, and it's a bold statement, but I think one of the biggest things we face in this world is radical religion, for sure, because religion is based on faith, and there's a lot of things in the world that have been just turned up to 10 in terms of violence and in terms of belief. That's what I'm getting at.
Well, it's used, at least from my observations in modern society. That's all I've lived with my years of living on this planet. It's being used as a weapon.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
In all shape and forms, all religions.
Weapon.
It's being used as a weapon.
Manipulative.
Yeah.
And it's
And it sucks for those who
dangerous
just want to
when
fucking
you
follow
can
some.
when you can get people so convinced to do acts of violence that, I mean, it's not saying a lot of the shootings that have happened, but like when shootings happen, what's messed up is that a lot of the shooters end up killing themselves. I mean, and here we are, like, people want answers or they want justice or whatnot. Maybe that's the justice they want, is they want the cops to shoot them. But what ends up happening is these shooters
they figured I'm going
continuously,
down, take
they
some people
kill
down.
victims and then they kill themselves. I
Right.
mean, it's like basically what ends up happening is the cops show up and in SWAT or whoever, like they show up and the shooter's already dead with a bunch of dead bodies around him. That leaves it just leaves a feeling of sorrow and like open ended. Nobody served justice. It's not saying that maybe the victims of the surviving victims of the victims want the shooter to get shot by cops, but yeah. Oh, closer.
Yeah, close.
You got it. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I was still thinking I was talking about banana bread.
Just talk over here.
Yeah. But it happens all too often, and I think definitely radical religion is super dangerous. It happens so often now.
Agreed.
And that sounds bold to say, but I mean, we've been here since. I mean, we grew up in the Iraq War. I mean, literally. That's what we grew up in. And ISIS, so we went from Al Qaeda to ISIS, and it just has been perpetuated into so much violent, faith-led sort of crusades. But it's also here in the United States too. It's not at all dictated by Muslim religions.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's not just that, man. I mean, that's the way
think
it's
a lot
painted
of-
here.
I
I'm sure
think-
it's painted the same way over there.
Oh yeah, yeah, propaganda.
Yeah.
I think the way it's dictated for sure. I mean, and that's what what's funny. So we have a mutual friend. I won't like say the family name, but Alex went over, and when he came back from deployment, I remember him, and this was like super early on, but I remember he had like patches or whatnot that were very indicative of like
his cars, combat action ribbon.
Yeah, exactly. That were very indicative of like shooting towel heads. Like, it was
yes.
Yeah, and that was the
I was enlisted, man. I can tell you, I was enlisted during that time. Okay, the month where I went in was the same month there was the highest casualties during the war at that time. And
dude.
And the culture.
And this is still an ongoing war, right?
Of course,
like, this is the longest ongoing war, right?
Yes, and so
17 years now.
Yeah. Well, not just that. Well, okay. Well, even with the like you said, you said towel heads is what that was their what they would call it. That's what they're doing. That's what is going towards. I'm just I don't mean to cut you off, but just to intervene to back you up with what you're saying. I enlisted. Okay, I enlisted before this, but I went in, had my head shaved, stepped on the yellow footprints in June 2010. A lot of other guys did too, our age, and following just a couple months after that too. June 2010 was the highest when we had the most U.S. casualties during the Afghan War. In Afghanistan alone, there was up to 500 something casualties, U.S. casualties that happened. So, and for this war in 1 month, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So the culture that created, if I'm bold to say, throughout the military, of course that's going to echo down to the guys who were just stepping on the footprints to be trained. And I can tell you this to reassure you, that is exactly the mindset, is towelhead. And I feel bad saying that almost, a towelhead, but that's the words that is used, unfortunately. I don't want to be, dude, I used to have hate towards the enemy, air quotes. But everywhere you turn from your left foot to your right foot and like around corners and stuff, there's a picture of someone with an AK-47 and flip-flops and you know what I mean? And you're supposed to get mad and punch that when you run by and shit like that. Like
just a response.
Exactly. I mean, that is a really detailed stormtrooper training. Yeah. So, yeah, that's what that's the mission. I'm sure it's hard because I'm torn halfway down the middle. Because I have so much respect for our servicemen and women. Actually, so much. That I celebrate all those days, with a lot. But at the same time, too, I believe a lot of people are fighting a war for the wrong reasons, and they're enlisted for reasons for the right reason, but the person up top is, of course, pulling the trigger for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
That's obvious. They probably know that. I knew that when I was in. I didn't know what was going on, but I just wanted to serve.
I would agree with that, too. Is that it's you're not getting tricked. You're getting sold.
Yeah. Like, God bless you for giving up your life to go serve for our rights.
And that's I will say, so, and being on...
But at the same time, as a general, the military-industrial complex as a whole, like, what the fuck?
I will say for being on the opposite side, what's interesting is that, so, frequenting a lot of bars, because I'm a hobbyist alcoholic. Like, I take care of my shit, but I like to drink alcohol. But meeting plenty of service people, and especially a lot of people that came off deployment. It was always, they would come back and look at you as like a secondary citizen for just being a civilian. And a lot of the times when I would interact or engage with these people, the only time that I didn't, and it's funny enough, and it's not at all bashing anybody, was with Navy SEALs or Green Berets. And I met with I don't know if you call it a battalion, but I met with 15 Navy SEALs, and then I met with 2 different groups that were 15, 20 people each of Green Berets when they were doing training here in Washington. And I don't know if it's just because of the work they did and how often they were deployed and the situations they were involved, but so what I'm getting at is that whenever I'd meet people that came off deployment from really, I would say, high active areas, in terms of violence, and especially when you're like a grunt, when you're there,
right?
You're just dealing with the brunt of everything. You're not a specialist, and dude, all those people. It's not disregarding them. They deal with hardcore shit. I mean, I know special forces people. I know Army Ranger people. Like their skill set is utilized for what they're used for. but I just feel a lot of the people that I interacted with that were like Army grunts, Marine grunts, were very angry. And it seemed misdirected. Like it seemed like they had an image, but it wasn't defined. And when they would come back, they almost looked down upon you for being a civilian.
I can agree with that 100%, man.
I feel for that.
I
really do, because I would try to convey, at least, because a lot of times they were hammered drunk.
Right.
And they were, for whatever reason, my face, people want to punch in. They want to pick a fight with me. I'm not at all a confrontational person. I'm really not. And not only that, I'm not saying because I'm strong or I'm tough or whatnot.
Yeah.
But I feel that I have this urge that if I was to get in a fight, I would just rip your ears off and I would do anything to subdue you. It doesn't mean
I believe
I'm
you.
fucking powerful, but that's how I am. I'm not confrontational at all, but if you want to harm my life, I'm going to put you on the ground, because it's putting me to that point where I just want my safety over yours, regardless if I bust your fucking knuckles or rip your ball sack off or whatever.
I agree with you, man.
But I've had plenty
there
of
is
times
a lot of
where
anger,
they
though.
just want to. When you can see that somebody just wants to fight you and they just look straight through you. And I can remember this vividly because it happened maybe 4 months ago. I was with this pretty girl that I was seeing, and we were at Parkway Tavern, and there was 3 gentlemen behind us, and they looked like military guys. I mean, they had the cut. They were bulky. They were big. They were loud and rambunctious. And it's not saying that's vindicative.
No, that's what it is.
It's very vindictive.
Yeah, yeah.
So we were sitting there drinking for an hour and a half, and this guy kept dropping his stool. I mean, just loud bangs, the stool would fall on the floor. So after about the 3rd time, I jokingly turned around and was like, "Hey man, you're done. You're cut off. You've had too much." And they laughed, but it was sort of just like that, ha, and then just dead quiet.
Yeah,
and so then I just awkwardly turned back to the lady, my date, and I was just like, I don't think they like my humor. So we sat talking for a whole another hour and a half. At the end, when they were leaving, I just felt this presence, because this dude's 6'5" and 230.
Yeah.
I just felt this little wall standing in between me and my lady that I was seeing. And I looked back, and he's standing there, but his eyes are not at all registering that I'm there, but he's looking at me, and he goes, "Hey man, that's not cool what you said." And I'm like, "Oh dude, I'm sorry, I was just joking." And he goes, "Yeah, you weren't joking." But he's looking right through my fucking skull, and he's big and bulky with khaki shorts and a tight U.S. Army shirt on, and he's just like, "Yeah, this guy just got back from 3 deployments and watched 6 of his buddies get blown up." That's a little exaggeration, but he talked about how he watched multiple of his friends die. And, I mean, it was just a lot to take in. And I was just trying to sit
of course.
there trying to woo this pretty girl. And so I'm looking, and he's looking right fucking through me, just I don't care what fucking comes out of your mouth.
Yeah.
Either or, if you're gonna disagree with me, I'm gonna stick my fist in your mouth,
smash
rip
your
your throat
fucking
out,
skull.
and I'm gonna skull fuck you.
Yeah.
That was his motive.
He wanted you to give him a reason to fucking fight you.
Exactly.
Especially an hour and a half later.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know? Now
Oh,
it's so
yeah.
that who
fucking
can have? Oh, that fucker said something
Yeah.
an hour ago. Let me get him to say
Yep.
something again this time so I can fight him.
Oh,
Well, I
dude.
tip my hat to you. Obviously, you didn't
No,
give him.
fuck no.
You didn't take the bait.
I literally,
You
I
didn't
was
take
just
the
like,
bait.
I just said, I was like, "I apologize, sir. You're right. I'm wrong." And he's like, just looked at me. He's like, "Yeah." And he walked away.
Yeah, you are.
The bartender was like, "Austin, you and your fucking hippie hair causing trouble." I was like, "Yeah."
Oh,
Yep,
shit.
Exactly.
Yeah, dude. I was gonna say earlier, a lot of anger is the best way to describe it, dude. You hit it on the fucking dot. I went through. I stopped using Facebook for a few years, and I went through my Facebook and browsed through some messages. It was just like, whoa, going way back years ago. And I was looking at. I saw the way I used Facebook when I was in. I was very mad. I was a very mad person. And I almost want to apologize to anyone who's listening who maybe talked to me during that time. I was just angry at the world, And you're right, man, because what I was taught when I was in, maybe not what I was taught, actually totally what I was taught, and the way that I felt was anyone who was not me, not us, who was not grunt, was fucking disgusting. Because what the terminology that's used is a disgusting civilian. Don't be a disgusting civilian. Oh, you want to do something like that? Oh, you want to oh, you're like a civilian. You're So then you hate anyone who's not you. At least when I was in, I hated opposing, like, I hated the Army because I was in the Marines. You know what I mean? Shit like that. Hated anyone who was a civilian because, dude, if I would walk around in society mad 24/7 at everyone and anyone for the way that they talked, when their fucking haircuts, their fucking nastiness, as what was repeated in my head. And you know what? That's how it is, but when you're over there, obviously overseas, it's like that for a reason because it works, and you do need to be in that Terminator mode to tie back to what you said at the beginning, that fucking instinct, man, that human instinct.
Oh, you need to have it.
And that's why they do it. They make it muscle memory, so you don't have to think when shit hits the fan. You don't have to think, should I listen to the
And I will say,
gun
like,
reload?
a lot of
You
these
just go.
people that I talked with that were, like, well vetted in terms of, I'll say specifically, too. So my dad was not a Green Beret. He was a Navy SEAL. And he rarely talked about his interactions with what he did, but he was very well kept, and I think he dealt with a lot. But so when I was I'm still at 7 Seas, but working and doing 7 Seas and meeting these Green Berets, a lot of these guys were in active missions when I was, like, in middle school and high school. So throughout this Iraq War, and then they were here in Washington State training for other conflicts coming up. And what was most interesting is that these guys were really level-headed. I'll be open and honest and say, like, we live in a very liberal state. We live in a state that I think doesn't allow for a whole lot of thinking outside of that, which may sound weird to people, but it does. Like, people can't have a discussion. If you're not liberal, you're getting attacked. Even if you have different ideals, but it's still liberal, you're getting attacked because if you're not for certain trains of thought, motives,
you are
it's part
you
of
are
that
an
perpetuating mind, and it's frustrating because you can't have open conversation. I think people would realize much more that there are people like-minded. They just might not believe in the same things you do, but that's the whole thing is we're getting pitted like a team against each other. If you're not on one side, you're on the other side. Anyways, a lot of these Green Berets saw a whole lot of. They talked about like actual slavery. They talked about actual like regime controlled places where if you acted up, they would shoot you. And these are places they were
spoke
put
out
in
of line.
missions. Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the guys talked about how he was working coincide, and I mean, I'm not going to give his name because I don't even know his fucking name because he never told it to me. But he talked about missions where he'd work side and side with the government, and they would consistently go into these guerrilla territory controlled areas, and they had no connections, and they're sort of like, hey, like, this is your task, this is your objective. If you make it out and get it done, that's what you're supposed to do. If you don't, you're on your own. Because they had no allies, they had no nothing. And he's like, dude, there's many times that he was like, I sat in the car many times with people, 15 plus people pointing guns at me, telling me to get out of the car because I didn't speak their language, I didn't have blah, blah, blah. And all I'd repeat was, if I get out of this car, my master's going to shoot me. And they related to that because for how they were, that was like similar to them. So they understood like, oh, I get it. Like if you disobey what you're supposed to do, you're going to die.
Right.
And
that's intense. That's playing chess.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Good
then
move.
they come back to the United States where you have all these rights and everything, and they're just so. It's not saying they're like super smart, but they deal with so much outside of our culture that makes them so catered to a lot of own gun shops.
Hostility.
Oh,
it makes them. You have to get comfortable being hostile.
Incredible, and I have a huge amount of respect for that because before I just got used to. It sounds weird to say, but JBLM brats. I got used to people that were just like hardcore military grunts.
JBLM
brats.
Like
you just hated civs.
Yeah.
I wasn't at all giving any disrespect for what you did, but you were just like, yeah, you don't do what I do. It's like, yeah, you're right, because that's not my calling. Like,
Right,
I already
exactly.
know I'm not supposed to be
You
there.
hate them because they're not doing what you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was super. It was very refreshing to have, and I have the utmost respect for all of them. They were very like sympathetic, and there's the Green Berets. They were actually working on an app for people that had PTSD, so that they could be connected to a military member that could talk to them about what they were going through, because they were talking about how it's hard to have the VA and counseling on all
Right.
this, but they wanted something that was with social media that you could connect to somebody that had been through the same shit you had been through or similar, that you could vent to or have some sort of, because I think that's a big thing too, is like, how do you, for all of our military forces, if you get deployed and deal with all this, how the fuck do you come back to society and then there's not like a job waiting for you? Like, what
Right.
the job that you did and then you're coming back to the States?
Cool.
What
You
job
know
is
how
like
to
that?
do that. How is that going to benefit
Yeah,
this company?
You fight enemy combatants,
Right.
and then what is that as opposed to like being on the SWAT team, or like,
Right, or joining a union, yeah, it's something like that. Well,
yeah.
no, man.
It was,
They
they
get
labeled. Respect, and,
people get labeled.
I will say that too. Like, I mean, we're coming up on Thanksgiving, but I'm just glad like people are home with their families. I hope everybody that cares about what they love can be where they're supposed to be, and if you're not, like, just make it back there.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah, well said, man. One thing I want to end it on, I said something today when we were joking around about, people being, you just mentioned it a second ago, liberal state, about being labeled, and you're being forced to joining one side or the other. If you're not with me, then you're against me, kind of mentality.
Yep.
Well, I made a joke earlier today around some people, and I said, you know what? I'm going to wear a hat that's going to say all the ists. I'm going to wear a hat that's going to say I'm racist, I'm sexist, I'm whatever, right? And then as soon as someone calls me out on it, which they will very quickly, as soon as someone points out, calls me out, I'm going to say, what? They're going to say, you're that, right? You're racist, you're this. No, I'm not. You're just, my hat, these words are telling you that, so I am? You don't know me.
A little mind game. I like that. That's probably good for people.
Yeah.
It's honestly,
Alan
that's
Watts
healthy.
blew my mind the other day when he said a quote, and he said,
Alan Watts?
Alan Watts, my friend.
I'm going to look him up.
Oh, my God, please do.
What is he? Is he a comedian?
He's a British-American philosopher who passed away in the 70s who studied Zen.
Okay.
Whoa. Yeah, pretty cool. He blew my mind with this quote, and he said, nature is multidimensional. And he said, language is linear. It's miniature language.
Oh.
Because he said, if you're asked to describe,
that's fucking deep.
if you're asked to describe your day, you're going to say, I woke up in the morning, I brushed my teeth, I got my coffee, I looked at the clock, I got dressed, I got in my car, blah, 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 blah. And what he said is, what you just explained there is so meaningless and pointless that if you were aware of what was truly going on, you wouldn't be able to explain it. And by truly going on, if you were aware of what you truly did, of what was going on during those exact activities that you did, in the sense of this world that we live in. Not thinking of other people's actions, your own brain. If you were truly aware of what was going on in your soul and your brain, you wouldn't be able to explain it. You shouldn't be able to, because language is so small for what we are as humans. And we have limited ourselves to language and words. Even Max Egan said that the alphabet is a poison. He says because we are only define everything that we know off of that fucking code, which is the alphabet. If it can't be a word defined, it does not exist. Right?
No, I agree.
Right. And if you can't explain it, it's not there.
I just like what he talked about.
Nature is
Nature.
multi-dimensional, language is linear.
That's so very true for what people say.
Anyways.
Their behavior. Oh,
Let's
you
leave it
send
at
us
that.
off on a fucking deep note, Lloyd.
Well, I mean, we got rowdy. We talked about a lot of military-related things this episode, for sure. We talked about World War II, then we talked about the military-industrial complex, aliens, space, and all that. The spiritual world is something I'm very much into recently, as in the last few months. I'm realizing it's just the beginning of just like how I went into the rabbit hole of conspiracies years ago. I'm just starting that rabbit hole of the spiritual realm, and really good results so far, man. So I recommend Alan Watts. I recommend Max Egan. Look those people up.
Alan Watts, Max Egan.
That's right. That's right.
Dude, open your mind, please.
Open your mind, discover, learn
Because
what's
you're already
out there.
doing it with us.
That's right. Send us some information. Send us what you think. Ideas for shows, topics, debates. If you disagree with us, if you want to tell us you love us, if you want to tell us to fuck off, whatever it is you want to do, let us know.
Please
do not make the mistake of not letting us know. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This is episode 29.
Oh, dude, we fucking love it. We got merch coming out.
That's right. Yeah, I kind of
Yes.
designed a little shirt. I wanted to see what people
Yeah.
like. I designed like 15 of them, and I can't make up my mind. So I picked the one I like the most, and it's actually the most simple, that black and white one. But yeah, we're gonna have some merchandise coming out. I'll let you know how you can get some. To be determined. So just stay tuned. Stay tuned, and you can get. I'm actually planning on something pretty sweet. You can actually get a free package from Pack X. It's gonna come with some stickers. You know, a little window decal, maybe a T-shirt, some bullshit like that. So stay tuned. Thank you to those listeners out there. Keep tuning in, and you can be in line to get one of those.
See you next week.
See you next week. Dude, I got a headache from yelling that shit.
It's so good. It's so good.
We'll see you guys next week.
Appreciate it.
This is the Pack X podcast, Pacific Experience. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Yes. Not getting paid a lot of money for the work you do for fucking banana.